we have the next one with people with similar experiences and different situations in different countries. What we are trying here to get conversation from you. The facilitator are all of them, and Tremante that is over there somewhere. Regarding the synergy between academy and industry. In my own experience, we created and still working even in the actual Venezuela with its regime, an organization that has been working for 28 years, linking the university to the industry. But the thing that makes it work, you know what? Which is what I insisted, if I'm gonna work on that, if not, I wouldn't do it. The university should not govern it. Academic people are not managers, they don't know what to do. So any organization bridging industry and academy should be managed by managers, not by professors. And should be directed by directors of the board, not by professors. So that was the thing that took me a lot of time to find the consensus in my university to do it. We did it, and it's about 30 years old already. It's the only thing that survived the Chavez regime. So that's the best test. Now, the reason to do that was to make research via consulting and consulting via research. Because consulting in the academic world is seen as something not that academic, it's a consultancy. And no one would publish any work of yours if it is related to consultancy, you know. At least not in a prestigious journal in academy. So this is something that we have to deal with if we really want to lead academy with industry, make research via consulting, which is applied research to real problem, and research via consulting. I said that twice. Research via consulting and consulting via research, and there is a cybernetic loop if we can do that, you see. So if one person can do that at the same time, he can feel this cybernetic loop inside of him or herself. But not many people would like to do both things. So, but an organization can do both things, having people doing one thing and the other doing the other thing, you know. So this is the topic of that introduced them. Probably I am wrong. He's more related to research via consulting and consulting via research, and he's more related to bridging industry and academy. And the third one that is not here, that is coming, Andres Tremante, was one of the president of the Venezuelan organization that I just talked to you about it. So I'm gonna look for him while you can start. Any one of you can start, you know. And then after that, I asked them to do it in a conversational session in order to get as much opinion from you as possible. You present him and you present him.
Do you mind if I open your internet browser?
What do you have in there?
Here, I'm trying to text the guy that is not here.
Why do you want to open your internet browser? Is that okay?
This one, so. Actually, I don't have a thing. Articulation. Yes.
I guess I can start talking while I'm bringing this up. Hi, my name is Joe Manganelli. I'm sorry that I'm a bit late. I got stuck in rush hour traffic. I'm going to bring up an image, and I think this is sufficient for right now. I guess I'll just start talking while since the topic is integrating research and practice, my background, I currently work for a company called Fluor. Fluor makes big factories. Right now I'm working on the design of a biotech factory that makes diabetes medication. And my role in that project is related to the design of the environment and also, or especially the sustainable design aspects of it. This is probably a good one to leave up there. I also teach user experience design and information architecture for Kent State's graduate program on information architecture and knowledge management. And I have a small consulting company doing user experience research and design. And all of that is actually, those are my ways to interact with industry while I'm working on my passion, which is trying to develop tools for modeling cognition during the early stages of conceptual design for environmental design. So I guess, you know, as far as
Did you say tools for modeling cognition?
cognitive processes, I should say, I guess, or the impact of design decisions on cognitive processes. So I'm going to pull up, and that. So I guess let me. Let's see.
Can you give an example?
I'm about to do that. So I'm going to pull up. So, okay, this is basically a tool that's in development. It's actually a checklist tool. Okay. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I have my personal interests in terms of research, but then nobody will actually pay me to work on any of that, and I'm not, you know, independently wealthy. So over the course of 20 years, I found a way to integrate with the working world and with academia, but also to keep my private research interests going. However, it tends to be the case that even in the working world or in practice, in a consultancy, nobody's actually quite interested in the integration that I'm looking at, but what they're interested in are the parts and pieces. So over time, you know, I think I used to get a little bit frustrated because I had this thing that I wanted to do, and I would try to get somebody to buy into that, and of course, people aren't interested because the value proposition in the immediate future is not clear. I think where it gets tricky in research or in academia is whether you're going after a grant for research or you're looking for partners or collaborators, it tends to be the case that it's important to be sort of topically relevant. There are usually trends in research and that are supported by funding, and it's important to touch on those themes. And it's also important, cross-cutting endeavors, which is the way it's talked about by National Science Foundation, are important, but at the same time, which would be sort of multidisciplinary work, but at the same time, where the interests are at any given moment, it just happens to be the case that where I had been focusing, I wasn't finding much opportunity. So what I ended up doing, which has worked somewhat, is to sell to each individual area what they're interested in and not try to convince them of what I'm trying to do. But on the side, then I get to develop my own personal interests. But I think the value for me, to put it very succinctly, in maintaining a foothold in research and teaching, and in maintaining a foothold in industry, while also pursuing a personal passion, is it can be summed up by this concept that I learned. It's a philosophical concept of indeed true versus necessarily true. And I think that necessarily true is something that might have what you would call internal validity, that in a certain sense it makes logical sense. The question is it actually applicable to anything? And I think a lot of times in academia, it's possible to come up with what I would consider to be very beautiful, necessarily true propositions or structures or systems that are they're actually of questionable merit. In industry, the opposite tends to be true. It's very possible to come up with systems or structures that serve the immediate needs of the moment or serve a profit motive, but may or may not be in the best interests of people or society long term. And they may or may not, they may even limit or stifle other healthy innovation. So I think that in business or in industry, what I have come to think is that business is very good at focusing on what is indeed true, but it may not be, it's so, at least in the US, it's so focused on a profit motive that it doesn't really, it's not necessarily, it's sort of true in a one-dimensional sense. It's very good at making money for the next quarter, let's say, but in terms of, charting a new course or a long-term investment or figuring out, the next big thing, or even just, serving humanity, it may or may not be useful, or it may be problematic. And so I find that when you combine the two and you have a sort of an academic approach to work where you're looking at lots of necessarily true things and you're simultaneously engaged in business, bumping up against what is indeed true, there's a tension or a friction that results. And I think what it helps to do is pull out the elements of the necessarily true ideas that most immediately serve some kind of useful need, and there's value in that. And this, basically what this is pulling from some theories here, ecological niche construction, and some work by a cognitive psychologist named David Kirsch on epistemic versus pragmatic action, which is the idea that there's a lot of tics and things that people do, and sort of involuntary movements, and they fiddle and fuss, and they do that when they're doing a task that they intend to perform. And it's sort of from a computer science perspective, you might look at all that fiddling and fussing as a whole lot of wasted energy and time. But in reality, he showed that when people do that, they're actually more efficient and accurate than if you ask them to sit down and be kind of robotic in what they do. And so, along with that line of research.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, you portray academic and research as friction. Is it possible to have a view, would you be antagonistic to having a view that they create more of the whole? In other words, the fact that you know what the problems are in the real world strengthens and improves your research instead of being friction to it.
Well, I think it does, but I think it's through that tension.
I see.
I think
it's
it's
tension that resolves improvement.
That's, there's a concept in research of triangulation of methods that if you, let's say you analyze data using one statistical method and you get a result, that's good, but if you could use 3 different statistical methods and it always gives you the same result, that's actually a more valid finding, because each method has its flaws and a result can hold up to multiple. So I think the same thing, that kind of triangulation is what happens when you kind of bang the efficiency of business up against the high-mindedness of academic research, and I find it very efficient and useful. So, you want to give your intro, Luis?
Okay. Well, thank you, Joe, for your kind talk. Since this is a participatory panel, I would like to share my experiences with the consultancy, and also you might be identified with one of them, and you can also give yours. The first time I heard about consultant was when I graduated as a mechanical engineer, and I worked in Lafarge, which is a cement and building materials company, a worldwide company. And there was a problem in the plant, and the managers were stopping, and they say, we have to call the consultants to get some help. That was the first time I heard that word. And I say, what do they have that they can solve this problem? Why the company itself cannot solve it? So they invited some company, and the company provided some way how to solve the problem with a mail, which was working bad. So I said, well, something good must come from that company since they can solve a problem to this company. So I said, well, probably I want to be a consultant then, because they can solve the problems that we cannot solve. And well, the second time is after I worked as an engineer in the cement factory, I went to the university as a teacher. and I started to do research. So still, I was getting to know that very nice field of research, but still with no relation with consultancy. And we started to do some research on fluid dynamics. And there comes an idea of the professors, the teachers, how can we provide services as consultants services to the companies, and then provide some solutions, some ideas, and then the university can get some resources, some budget in order to go on and to buy equipment to start with this loop that Professor Naguib was saying. I mean, consultancy via research and research via consultancy. And the third time, I was in Prague, in Czech Republic, working in the laboratory of fluid dynamics, and a company that is automotive company, Skoda. They produce cars, and they now belong to Volkswagen Group. So they had a problem with the cooling system. They wanted to know the aerodynamic forces in the radiators, because they provide these forces provide drag, and they need to overcome the drag. And the company came to the university with that problem, and the head of the department said that they can set up a team of consultants, let's say, but we were all staff of the university. So in that case, our research was going to be applied in solving a problem for a private company. Then in this case, I can see the relation between research via consultants. And of course, they provided the money for buying equipment. We bought several aerodynamic scales. We bought all the equipment for adequate and the wind tunnel, which was not for that specific device. And we made the measurements. Of course, this is another thing. For example, they want solutions. They want to get the values of these forces. And what happens if we are providing wrong values, right? They will not trust you like, okay, if you are at the university, you are right. Probably we are not right. So they were very smart, and they asked another company, another private company, which was founded by former students from the same university. So that company provided the computational simulations, and we provided the experimental simulations. So every 15 days we had meetings, and then we presented our values and they presented their values. Sometimes they were not the same, and it was very interesting because it was like a boxing fight. We were in one corner, the computational guys were in the other corner, and in the middle, the person from Skoda was like, you know, trying to find the bottleneck or the solution for that. And yeah, many times we have to give our points of view, and the other company did it as well until we get the same results in order to validate the results. So this was a tremendous opportunity to find the relationships between consulting and research. And the last experience I had is when I finished my PhD, I entered a consulting company, which is Altran, which is a French-based company that has more than 25,000 consultants worldwide. And this is a very fun story, because when I was going to be hired as a consultant, working for a project of automotive industry, and when my first day when I started at the company, I get a booklet of the company that how you can improve your career as a consultant. So it's like a staircase. The first level is consultant, then you go to lead consultant, then senior consultant, and that's that career. But I saw another way of how to go in that career, which is the management career. And when I talked to the boss, to the CEO of that company, or the regional company, he asked me if I was okay with the job position that I got. And I said, well, I'm okay, but I would, you know, after reading the booklet, I prefer to get this career, the management one, because I can provide, I think, more ideas to solve problems that only working in some project. And he said, okay, that was very good because he gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted. And in that case, I started doing business development. In that case, you have to visit the companies, and then you have to ask their problems. And they will tell you that there are some problems in this process at this stage. And then you have to imagine how your guys from the consulting company can fit into this problem and then provide solutions. You also have to show your experience solving problems because they will not pay you for nothing. I mean, they have to prove that you are good at it. And yeah, well, the basic work that I was doing in that company was setting a team of consultants for every project. And every month or every 15 days we have follow-up meetings. And so we were seeing the solutions that they had so far, and we were providing more service in order to get more opportunities for the companies for more companies to work. And it was a tremendous experience. I worked there for about 6 months. I had to finish because I returned to my home country, which is Venezuela, where Professor Najib Cayos is from too. And yeah, those are my experiences in consulting. I think that nowadays it's the truth. I mean, if you want to publish a paper in a very important journal and you mention a company, they will like try to remove the value the add value that the paper has. So usually, I was in the university in Czech Republic, and they had this thing that they have projects with private companies, and they have a lot of money because of those. But when they want to publish this new findings and these solutions, the companies don't allow them to publish because they are like publishing some secret information that must be not given. So this is the problem that we have. So we have tried to remove the names because it's sensitive information, and we are trying now to write a paper in a general form, trying to fit the scientific way. So I don't know if you have had any other experience in this world.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, once again. So as I already told, in the morning, I'm a research associate at Science to Business Marketing Research Center. And what we are doing basically is transferring research to the business and vice versa. And how we are actually doing this. So normally in a basic base, we are trying to facilitate this university business collaboration. But the example that I wanted to give you right now, so you were talking about as a consultant, as an employee of a company. And what I want to show you is that we are working at the university, being an integral part of the university, we are conducting projects every semester with a company which we call actually consulting projects. So every semester, 3 or 4 projects with 3 or 4 different companies. Our bachelor students doing that as a bachelor stuff, and complementary to that we have master students who are supervising this project, and of course they have support from us as a professional researchers, let's say, and that is the basic concept that we have behind. And actually I'm going to present this on Friday, but it will be called like problem-based learning. But now I wanted to emphasize this feature of a consultancy, because we call them as a consultancy. Yes, of course, that was problematic at the beginning because university was not that happy. So, okay, why are you doing this? But what the hell, we are bringing money. And of course, by the end of the day, everybody is happy. And another important thing that I probably should say is that we are University of Applied Sciences. That might be probably a big problem at the normal university. But if you are working at the University of Applied Sciences, it is even considered as an advantage, because let's say from educational point of view, students are happy because they got motivated, as you said. When students are working in different kind of a project, so they want to do it really, and being in this real work environment, they are trying to be more creative and stuff like this. And the second thing, so they get these transversal skills, which they then can apply in real life after graduating. And another advantage for the university is that we can get involved company actually in the curriculum development, because at this case company will say, I want to have your students those kind of skills, and that of course helps a lot. Of course there are many disadvantages, or not disadvantages, I would say barriers and things that are really challenging, but my personal experience is that those kind of projects really facilitate the educational process and the collaborational process between university and business. Because by the end of the day, we can create many different startup projects which are basically driven by the students who are studying right now. And of course, if we are successful enough, we can get even innovations and, I don't know, research and stuff like this.
Yeah, what I read about what they are doing is really something extraordinary, with the etymological meaning of extraordinary. The way they are doing things was supposed to be the second phase after Nindes. That never worked. So when you fail in something, you can value and appreciate when other people are not failing but are doing what should be done. I mean, what I understood what you are doing with your group. It's a dream coming true. I really mean that.
Thank you.
We've been, you know, for 20 years organizing conferences and listening to presentations. And I've been involved with at least 7, 8 universities in the United States, and many in Latin America. I never heard or read anything, not even similar to what they are doing. If I have to mention an example of education which is not mere instruction, is what they are doing. There are a lot of more examples, of course, not just what she's doing. But this is one very good example about what my personal dream about what an education should be, in order not to get reduced to mere instruction.
So of course it was very challenging at the beginning. I mean, I'm very young, so I basically work only a few years. But when I hear the story, which actually my boss, aka professor, also tell us, it was very challenging at the beginning. So to convince the university and at the same time trying to involve companies, that was impossible at the beginning.
We couldn't do it in 5 years. So this is why we couldn't do it in our university in 5 years. After we did the organization to support that, we couldn't do it because we couldn't convince the people. You did.
So we do the same in Switzerland. So I'm also teaching in the University of Applied Science. And
That's a bit smaller than China.
well, okay. I mean, and if you're lecturers in my university, you have 1/3 of your job is teaching, 1/3 is consulting, and 1/3 is research.
And
So we have to
consulting with
combine
the students.
all the 3 activities, and this is a very good way, because when we are talking in the classrooms, so we can tell the students, this is not a joke. So I mean, tomorrow I have to go outside, and some companies will pay me, and we are as expensive as the normal consultant. So we are not allowed to go under the price. So and I will explain to this company the same things I'm explaining now for you. So we are very connected to to the real world at the same time, and then we are creating new value because we also have to find some project for research. And the Swiss government is doing something very intelligent. So if we have a contract with a company, let's say we have a project for $500,000. So the Swiss government will pay half the price for us to the school, and the second half is on the charge of the company. So we are creating a very dense tissue between the university and the economic world.
Because what they are doing is not just consulting via research, but they are consulting via research and the students. So the undergraduate student are being supervised by the master students. And the master student and the undergraduate student, they are going to their professor lectures, and the lectures should be adapted to what they are doing as in their consultancy. I never saw a thing like this, really. Maybe all of you saw it, but I didn't see it.
No, because the accrediting bodies would shut it down. And the reason they would shut it down, no, I'm not kidding, the reason they would shut it down is because there are clear goals and objectives, all mapped in. It's just like the testing we do in the K-12 environment, that it doesn't allow any of that room for really growth and expansion
And you're going to tell me that this is not a cause for a sit down and cry.
It's
Crying, to cry.
No, it's frustrating because we want our
With tears,
students to
you know.
be,
But
our
you know,
students
it's
to be
changing,
productive.
it's changing though, because I think that higher education has recognized that the way people learn is through engagement. And so, you look across the universities, now they are developing more and more internship programs.
But it's different.
That's right.
And it's different, it's different from.
What I agree is
I agree,
different.
it's different, because you're actually getting paid to do something.
No, not just that.
Not just because.
No, they are making consultancy via research, and the undergrad student are making consultancy via research, and they are being supervised by the graduate student, and all of them
That's really
are
good.
being lectured by their professor with a lecture adapted to what they are doing.
That's really good.
And it's brilliant and it's creative, but I'm telling you, if you've ever been, who's been involved in accreditation review?
There's one thing about the.
I wish I can be in your group as a student.
You're
I
the
really mean
welcome.
that. I'm not using the hyperbole. I mean,
No, it's brilliant, it's brilliant.
One thing about the accreditation process, is what you've been, I won't go into all the history, but there's something called ACE, the American Council of Education. Now what happens is this, is that you go through, there's a process that they go through, it's kind of expensive actually, because we were trying to do it at IAL, so I'm fairly familiar when I was working directly with people in DC. So what you do, you put together, you do the dog and pony show and stuff like that, you shoot it in, and what they do, they come out and inspect your facility, and inspect the course, and if it passes what they've got, what they'll do, they'll shoot it over to the National Council on Higher Education, which basically rubber stamps what ACE does. Now, I don't know if there are minimal standards for getting a course accredited. You have to have, of course, the text, you have the curriculum, syllabus, and everything else. I'm not convinced that ACE would exclude any course involving a practicum or consultancy or anything else. I'm not convinced that they would do that. It's just a question of paying a $9,000 fee. It's what it costs.
Question, how would you all familiar with the term that I've heard a lot called a project-based curriculum?
Yes.
And so how would this, my understanding is the difference is there's a formal legal consultancy role that they're actually providing a service. And so is the issue in the US the sort of legal environment in which we exist that universities are?
But it's all right, here's what the messy component is, I think people are missing. It's not, I don't think there's the objection. The objection is to what they call practical, that is your practical experience. I don't think that's the objection. What the objection I think everybody's running into, and I'm not convinced that it's illegitimate, I think it's a valid concern, that you have a proprietary or pecuniary interest which biases what you do. So whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent, that you go in and do the practicum and stuff like that, that's going to be slanted toward the company's objective. I'll give you an example, like Microsoft. Microsoft has this real junk system where your applications are bundled with a kernel. I guarantee you, you go over to something like Google, that's not going to happen. Now, if you're doing consultancy, if you're into half-assed decent system design, you're not going to do a Microsoft thing. And you'll be booted out the door, rightly so. So if you're doing a consultancy, and you go through, and you tell me if I'm incorrect, if you go through your computer course and learn what your theory, blah, 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 it's going to shape your theoretical, whether you work with Microsoft or Google or Android. I think Android does, it's based on a Linux model, correct me if I'm wrong. So you've got, if you're going to go coming out of a CIS program, and you do your consultancy, that's going to shape that. But each one of them has a pecuniary interest or proprietary interest. That's going to shape your bias. That's why most journals, I know the AAAS, I speak from experience, that one of the standards for your publishing an article in science, you at least have to show your affiliation. Now, if you're paid by them, you're out the door. They won't even look at you. Yeah. And that's right, that's right. You want to try to eliminate the bias. And I think this whole, it's not consultancy, it's not the practical. It's a company's got some damn financial interest in it. And I don't see much discussion. How are you going to winnow that out? And if you're going to submit something for publication, you say you did a consultancy for XYZ company, they're going to look at you in a jaundiced way, and probably rightly so. I'm going to look at the bias. So you've got to separate that affiliation out. In other words, how can you do a quote, and I know this is a philosophical issue, but how are you going to do, quote, objective research consultancy when you're being paid to get an expected result? That's the issue, not the practical. So let's deal with the basic issue of the bias. How do you get out of that?
Is that a challenge or opportunity?
How are you going to?
How do you look at it?
How many people are going to avoid that? You're going to shake. That employer comes in and says, "I want this blah blah blah," like the parameters I gave. Guess what? You're going to.
Okay. So what happens?
I think that there is a worse problem than that.
No.
I believe this is a problem, but this is a worse one, which is the academic world is looking for intellectual conveniency.
We have an ideology in the academic world too, I admit it.
So what I don't think, the worst part of what you are doing in your group is how you could convince the professors to provide a lecture adapted to what the students, the student activity in consulting. How you achieve that?
I can tell you. Actually, both modules that we are doing, those kind of projects in, are ours. So my professor, my boss, he's actually doing those, both of the modules, strategic marketing and international marketing. In each of the modules, we have 4 different topics, let's say. So one of them is lecture, second case studies, third one I forgot, and fourth one is a project.
Better learn for the test.
Because the teachers got to do additional effort than the usual teacher that is, giving classes with some diagrams for 10 years.
Yeah. I can give an evidence, which is really challenging every time, because you actually, so if I lecture, I have my lecture, so if I know my material, so that is okay. But every time when we are conducting those kind of projects, it's really takes a lot of resources.
Yes.
But it's worth it.
Well, of course. So this make it higher education. So my problem is even an ethical problem. Because in higher education, the 90% of us are doing higher instruction. But we say that we are doing higher education. But we are not doing higher education. 90% of us is doing higher instruction. which is one of the many means that should be used for education.
All right, can I show you? All right, here's kind of an issue. I would argue that instruction, I think we agree on this, basically refers more to the technique. And the technique is what you guys are trying to get out of the consultancy. Now the problem is that maybe there's kind of like an abstract technique of the instruction, kind of like a one-hand clapping thing, and that technique that's being taught basically does not refer to anything outside of this real, which you find in consultancy. Education, we don't have any education, I can see up there.
They have education.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I wish my kids were studying in our university.
Yeah, all right, well, all right, if they're getting a kind of like a how to and the why of what they're doing, that's the education. If they're only getting the technique, how to make one of these things, that's technique.
I mean, education is at least to prepare your kids for life.
Yeah, but
You
how
are
to
preparing
think.
people for life, not just, 2 and 2 plus.
Yeah, but it's how to think.
2 plus 2 is 4.
Right, but it's how to think about thinking, about how to think about theory, how to think about knowledge, epistemic. That's what education is.
Yeah,
Most of the
but
stuff-
wait a minute, if it's not cast in stone for the professor, if it's not cast in stone, the accrediting body, then it becomes an issue. Everybody's nervous, shaking in their boots.
If the promotional system is, academic promotional system is going against that, so you cannot do it.
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't say that we are university. I mean, even in German language, it's kind of discriminating. So we are not called as a university, we are called Fachhochschule. So it is completely different. And therefore we are
And you are the real university.
What is
You are the real university. At least you are the real higher education.
But we are not pursuing.
University, most of them are higher instruction. You are the real higher education and not even you use the word university.
And that word in German means University of Applied Science?
Yes.
At
yes.
least?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, university is Universität,
Can
and
you start-
University of Applied Science is not Universität.
Can you start a chapter?
Yeah.
Do you have time to start a chapter in your university oriented to make other people try to think the possibility to work like you are working?
Actually, we are conducting.
You are
right
young
now-
and you can do that. You still have at least 60, 70 years, more years to go.
I'm currently working on a project of European Commission, and we are doing really big research on university business collaboration, just to show people and universities, businesses, governments, and society, by the end of the day, why we're actually doing this, which challenges and benefits it has, and stuff like this. We've already done one in 2011, and now we are doing a follow-up project. So-
By the way, I think I should mention, the university where I am at became a center of actuarial excellence. There are only 2 dozen like that in the world. And this designation, Center of Excellence, came from the Society of Actuaries dealing with the industry academic problems. What happened there is that people in industry will publish papers, and the academicians will look at them and say, there's no rigor here, there's no mathematics, you don't know what you're doing. Then the academicians would write papers, and they say, you have your rigor and everything, you don't know what goes on in the real world, the paper's worthless. So there is this
Different culture.
Well, yeah, there is this tension here. So the Society of Actuaries dealt with this problem. How do we make people more friendly? So, I mean, you can't tell them to sit down and respect each other. They have legitimate differences. So they created a designation, Center of Excellence. And so far, there have been about 2 dozen schools in the world that have achieved it. And the Center of Excellence basically means that the university has fulfilled certain education requirements and has a publication record. And they're hoping that this type of designation will sort of help bridge the step toward bridging, the disconnect between academia and industry. And some people mentioned projects here. So I was at an educational lecture of the study of actuaries, and actuaries is really an applied and industry-based mathematics. So this woman was speaking about the course she developed, I think she's in Connecticut, and they're like, in Connecticut, they're like several dozen actuarial firms. She'll go around to them and say, what problems do you have? And she'll collect 10, 20 problems. Then she'll have a summer seminar, and she'll go in and say, here are the problems people say they have. What do you want to tackle? And she'll help them, and they'll just throw them in, and the assignment for the course is to complete that. They'll do some programming, some other things. It may involve big data. By the end of the course, the students have solved the problem, and they've learned a great deal of actuarial mathematics. So, like, these are some of the techniques I've heard. Some of them are at the administrative level, like creating designation. Some of them are at the teaching level, where you throw people in and create a project-based course. And that's the comment I made before. I've seen a lot of success and enthusiasm in students who, I've seen this over the years. I've come to this conference now for 10 years. I've seen a lot of, and I've heard students lecture here on projects they've made using computer science. But that is a way of getting people involved. There's no money involved, so the problems, and please don't misunderstand me, the problems Jeremy mentions are very realistic, but these are some of the ways that they dealt with it. I just want to make one more comment on what Jeremy said. I read a lot of nutrition, so I saw this wonderful quip in this article. As you know, a lot of people oppose sodas and other things because they harm your health. So one person said it like this: isn't it odd that 80% of the paper is saying that soda drinks are not harmful for you are funded by the Coca-Cola firms, and 80% of the papers that say they are funded by independent research? And there's been a war going on, and it's one place to look if you want to see what happened and how they evolved it. I even saw an article recently on what's going on. The companies, I mean, there's been advertising and other things, but the companies now are marketing overseas where there's not so much protection. So they're not poisoning Americans, they're poisoning people overseas. But the point is, they're not going to give up because that's how they make their money. But there are instances where you can see positive effects. Like I mentioned to you, the tensions give rise to resolution, and there are always, I see a sample candy. You haven't read the literature, okay? So, sample items and how these things are being approached.
What I see here is a structural barrier between academia and
Yeah,
industry.
yeah.
Because we are trying to.
And the fault is in our side, in the side of academia. That's my opinion.
Yeah, but
The
basically.
fault is on our side.
If you see the industries, in order to make there some advances, they have set their own research and development department. So that's what you have. I mean, so they have to invest a lot of money in their equipment. Of course, they will not let them use some other companies because they are trying to compete. But look at this. When Skoda came to the university in Prague, I mean, they wanted to test some components, but they didn't have the equipment. So they said, okay, let's go to the academy and let's ask for that service because they have the equipment. But if you see Audi will never do that because they have a big research and development laboratories in Germany, a lot of big wind tunnel testing devices, and so.
But still, they are collaborating actually with the
But
university.
exactly.
But
in that
in a
case,
different
university
way.
goes to
Yes.
the company for example, for the sports, the skiing sports in the Aerodynamics labs in Audi. So that's the inverse process. The academia goes to the industry.
So there are many different ways of collaborating actually. So this is the curriculum development, for example, student mobility, professional mobility of researchers who actually can visit probably company for a few months just staying here, and I don't know, joint research and stuff like this. So there are many different things that actually are possible in this field.
So the thing you said about the Skoda company, when they approached you and that you had the opportunity to put that consulting into research, that's actually how the students from the local university who work as research assistants and also do their bachelor and master thesis based around the research projects that we do. So it's also a lot of back and forth there.
I think where academia may have fallen down in some of this is that they may not have recognized the value of the praxis. But I think somehow if you could take in the world industry and somehow how would you objectify it? Would you apply the kind of like double blind kind of methodology? Every company, I'm sure, has something to say that in some degree has some truth to it. Most of it's propaganda and advertising, I don't trust that kind of stuff. But in its own right, obviously, it developed practical things. Now, where academia may have fallen down, I think academia is entirely correct about their activity, although the philosophical problems there, is somehow being able to identify the sample points. How do you make a car? How do you make something else? Everyone's got something to say their own, very, what I would argue, superfluous variety. Well, because most of that stuff is superfluous variety. The damn thing drives, it goes, what the hell? Why do you have to make 16 different small versions of it? It's a waste. But each one of them may have its own truth. Where academia may have fallen down is being able to somehow appropriately sample, maybe in a double-blind fashion, taking out that practical truth and making it with the theory. That may have been the case. I do not think that company bias can, anyway, I agree the academics cannot penetrate and even further bias academic research. I sure as hell wouldn't want Microsoft values coming into computer information science.
And I don't think it would have to. I mean, listening to you, this discussion, the thought that comes to mind is there's great examples of nonlinear dynamical systems that are stable in various states, but there's not continuity between states. And the great example is always a horse's mechanical movement in between a trot or a gallop or a canter is not actually a stable mechanical system. It's chaos, and then it finds a new stability. And I think to your point about, I think where Coke and the industry is able to come at the researchers is, you know, this is my impression, I'm more on the social sciences side, coming from my research background. My impression is that with certain hard sciences and where the mathematics are very, very rigorous, there may be something like an objective result that's derived. With a lot of this, anything related to biology or cognition or behavior, the measures can get kind of fuzzy and a lot of assumptions have to be made. And I think where industry is able to come in, my experience and impression is able to come in and undercut academic research findings is to point out that you had to make a lot of assumptions and exclude a lot of things. And once we bring that all back into the picture, you can't say anything. Now they're doing that with a motive, but it's also not, that in a lot of cases it's true. But I kind of think, to go back to the point about, you know, having discrete functional states that don't have to have a continuity between them. My own experience, having a foot in all the realms, is that I see no problem keeping what I would consider theoretical research in the Enlightenment sense of research, where it is not bound at all to anything other than a search for truth as something that exists on a plane by itself and is almost like a meditative or personal pursuit. And then all the applied stuff, the interesting thing to me about the applied stuff is there's the university's concept of applied, which might be taking methods that are in development and applying them to a new domain, for instance, and that becomes research. But then industry's idea of applied is, it seems more and more, in my experience, is big companies are going to a model where the way they make money is having, you know, patent catalogs. I mean, even in industries that traditionally didn't operate that way, like architectural design, building design, there's a trend toward getting these patent catalogs. That's a sort of applied research where this kind of overlap seems to make sense. So it seems like there's the teaching, as you say, technique, fundamental skills. There's an applied level that there might be a bridge between industry and academia. But that's really, that's not what I would consider. If you look at the way one university might define research, that kind of applied research typically isn't considered, that you wouldn't get tenure for doing that. That's part of your job, to educate the students, but you would not get tenure. But, so I think, but to be fair, even theoretical research, at least in the US, is sort of corrupted in a way and not what it perhaps maybe once was or should be, in the sense that a lot of it is driven by what the government is willing to fund. And so when they put money in a direction, people go in that direction. That doesn't, and that in and of itself is problematic, because things that should be studied don't get studied.
Well, yeah, you'll not be very
I
blunt
mean,
about
I've
it.
been 30 years in my country listening to that.
Deeper.
And I've been 20 years in the conferences listening to the same thing.
We call that science 2 here.
Any one of us is doing anything to do something oriented to what we are convinced of. I'm not asking people that are not convinced to do anything. But in 50 years, people talking about how wrong is the promotional system in the university, the academic promotional system. Isn't time to make a revolution in that matter? Someone told me this is not possible. No revolution is possible when you started it. Because if it was possible, the name would not be revolution. So I told my kids several weeks ago, several months ago, I felt as a cockroach when I saw Sanders, 74 years old, starting a revolution, a movement in this country in another dimension. I completely disagree with all what he's saying, 100%, not even 99%. Because I know how bad this is socialism, because I'm in the state, because the socialism of my country. So I disagree with him 100%. But I respect this man as you cannot imagine. 74 years, and when he started, the probability were 0.1% that he can even survive the 15 or 20%. He started a revolution that is gonna continue after he died. He did it. He went against the whole system. In my opinion, in the wrong way, but he did it. So I told my daughter, I feel like a cockroach. Because I am 72 in 10 days, 73 years old, and I feel like I'm nothing, with no energy to start anything.
You've done that.
So this is why I'm looking. This is why I'm looking at you.
Do you want to start a revolution?
He wants me
This
to
is why
start
I'm
a
looking at you. I mean, go ahead with that.
What would you accomplish if you actually had energy? By comparison.
Yeah, right. We turn on the lights.
Everything has a socio-political, you'll hear about this Friday, I think I can address that Friday. I think that it has to do with language and everything else. I worked at White Sands, Missouri, for 9 years, 7 to 9 years. Now, I'll tell you what you got. Eisenhower was right in 1959. We forget that.
Industrial, military.
Military-industrial complex, I saw that twice, right up front. I found hundreds of millions of dollars pissed away on systems that already existed. I documented these damn systems. And I'll tell you what drives this country. It is the military-industrial complex. It is Wall Street. Sanders is correct. But I'll tell you Friday, I'll go into socialization, because it's not what you think it is. But I'll tell you what drives this and why academia is suspicious. I'm suspicious. Academia is suspicious because of what is dictated by these goddamn corporations that are pissing away trillions of dollars of our money. I've seen it. I wrote the damn status reports. Now, that's what happens. And when they come out and they dictate to academia what they want, what the government wants, what Wall Street wants, what IBM wants, that's what runs this country. And we better damn well get an idea of the socio-political context in which we find ourselves. It's not the free entrepreneur. Hell, I'm the head of a damn inventors organization right now. I see this stuff every day coming across my desk. People think they're independent inventors. That's a bunch of crap. You want to know what it costs to get a patent in this country? You have any clue? The independent inventor, the Edison, is a bloody myth. And what drives innovation in this country is IBM and the others. It's a military-industrial complex that drives it. And that's why academia is suspicious. I don't blame them.
Jeremy, the crap is that we continue believing in Aristotelic and Platonic ideas that theory is more prestigious than anything else. This is why
that's a different area. You're right.
The great and Archimedes was the worst because he was working with his hands, which is okay. I'm not against that. This is wonderful. This is beautiful. This is one of the things that separate us from the animal, to be able to make theory. The problem is, yes, I am an animal also, you see. But what I said was, so, what the problem is the intellectual intolerance to any academics thinking in another way than the usual way that the theory is the master, is the pope of the knowledge. And everything else should be, directed. Theory is okay. It's the most beautiful thing that you can imagine. But you cannot live with just theory. Even Aristotle got to eat. Even Aristotle got to eat. He's the one that most promoted theory. Even him got to eat.
I'm not convinced that academia doesn't have an appreciation for the practice. I really don't. I think there's I'm not sure if that's...
Yeah, he's asking me about the session that we haven't started yet. I said we missed most of them.
Hell, we can go till 8
session, we missed most of them.
Well, who gives it?
And you know why we missed most of them? Because you are integrating this session with their session. Because their session was to relate academy with industry. Their session was on education, and you are doing integrating education with that, with the integration of academy and industry. You are also integrating education. No, I'm not blaming you, I'm testing you.
But the what you've done is brilliant, but I don't know how easy that is for us to pull off in the U.S. I think we have issues. I think, in Europe and Asia, this is respected. In the U.S., I think...
I know, I understand
your
your
bad
concern, because, originally I come from Kazakhstan, and I was trying to do something like this also in post-Soviet time. So we have it, but it doesn't work good enough as in Western Europe.
It's not so respected. complicated, it's so challenging. I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
if
yes,
you're
it's
doing a
classic
fabulous job for a company, say you're working internship work with Ford, why is there such stigma to be able to publish, right in the article,
Because you're so-
that this is Ford?
Yeah,
Because there's a
No,
peculiar,
but I know, I
there's a
understand
peculiar
that.
interest in this. You
No,
don't
I
do that.
understand that. There is a Latin American philosopher of economy that said one very truthful phrase. Academics want to publish. Corporation wants to hide.
That's right.
So the product of academics is papers. The product of the industry is patents. You have to hide and protect. So this is the nature of both of them, but there is a tension that could be destructive or could be a constructive tension, like the sexual tension is constructive.
That's the difference.
Like the tension between North Pole and South Pole is constructive because you get the magnetic field. So with the opposite, you can have destruction if you want, or you can have construction. No, not even attraction, but hey, from high school we know that a voltage is equal to intensity of the current by the resistance. The voltage is the difference of voltage, the difference. So the opposition between electrons and protons is what moves the current. So if you don't have opposition, you have no movement.
Dialectics.
You have no movement. So this is an opposition. With this opposition, we can create a movement, but up to a present, instead of the constructive movement, I'm feeling there's a destructive one to both sides.
To that point, I don't know if this is of interest, but so I was working on a project with a hospital and a university, and what we did, there's a method called the card sort that comes out of user experience research, where we documented all of the needs. The hospital was essentially the client, but they were also making something that would serve the needs of the patients. The researchers wanted, to work on this project and to get a grant and to get published, but they didn't necessarily care about solving the needs of the patients because there was, other than their personal interest, there was no career incentive for them, right? I mean, so what we did is we did 2 card sorts, and this might get to the double blind idea. Everybody in the hospital, after we documented all possible needs that could be addressed, which was done through observational research and surveys, we took those needs and we had each group sort them and prioritize them. And so the hospital came up with a priority list, and the researchers came up with a priority list. And the hospital's priority list was primarily driven by what would increase user satisfaction. The researchers' priority list was primarily driven by what was going to get them publications and be a good project that they could chase grant money for. Well, what we did is, let's say we started out with 50 needs. We did find 2 or 3 where they overlapped. And so then it was at that point, that's how we said, okay, this is where we're going to focus, and this way it can work for both sides.
If we have tolerance between these 3 cultures, because they are cultures, if there is intellectual tolerance, there will be no problem. They will be just synergies. If we can tolerate that other people have other objectives in life to make theory, but this is not my objective in life. So I respect the theoretician, but I expect reciprocity to respect him, that he would respect me, that I want to make a bridge. So as long as we have this pyramid, the theory here and the praxis here, And then applied science is not even applied science, it's science, called applied. And some people confuse applied science with engineering, which are opposite. Nothing to do engineering and applied science. With engineering, the basic thing is to design. That's the first step. And to design is using the left lobe of your brain. So what you are doing, I really mean that, is developing both lobes in the students. For example, in math, I know nothing about math. I just received 3 courses in what is a problem and analysis and synthesis in the Greek. So I ended up thinking that math, geometry, can develop one side of the brain of the other, depending how you do it. So if you go from if you go from axiom to theorem, it's completely different than if you go from theorem to axioms. To go from theorem to axioms is what the mathematician did, discovering the theorem. What they teach us in the university is from axiom to theorem, which means they describe in a logical way, systematic way, what the mathematician created. So why we cannot teach mathematics in both ways? To go from axiom to theorem as it's being used, but also to try to go from theorem to axiom that would develop another part of the brain, is the creative one, is the analytical one, not analysis in the sense of material analysis, but is in the sense of logical analysis, okay?
Deductive.
Yeah.
Deductive rather than
Yeah.
inductive.
Yeah, but the deductive, you can, you have 2 ways for the deduction. You can deduce from the axiom, but you might have a theorem to see if it is truth or not. So you have the other to go the other way around. The one is mathematical synthesis, and the other one is mathematical analysis. So why you don't develop both things in the brain of the student, even in math? So if we can do it in math, we can do it everywhere, to develop the 2 parts of the brain. What you are doing, you are developing the 2 parts of the brain. And besides deduction, you are using induction. Sorry.
No. I'm just asking you the difference between axiom and the theorems. I mean, they are both very equivalent. I mean, if I take a theorem as an axiom, then I will use this theorem to demonstrate what I call axiom. So it's the same.
I can answer that.
He's the mathematician.
Yes, I do.
Here's the analogy. Everyone knows about the Pythagorean theorem, which says, just for example, if you have a triangle, 3 inches, 4 inches, and 5 inches, you get a right angle. Now, the Pythagorean theorem is industry. The Pythagorean theorem was known 1,000, 2,000 years before Pythagoras. The Egyptians used it. You want to have land, you want to have rectangular plots of land, you want to do other things. You need some way of assuring a high standard of consistency in right angles. So everyone knew this theorem. Yes, the axioms are equivalent to the theorems, but the point is the theorems are something in the industry, there's something in the real world. No one sees the axioms. What Euclid did is looked at all these theorems. What Pythagoras did is he proved the theorem. He reduced the theorem, which everyone knew, to more basic truth. And he did that using, well, there are several hundred proofs of Pythagorean theorems. So the point is, what Euclid did is he took all the known theorems, all the known industry results, and said, we can reduce these to 5 postulates. Now I think there are more postulates, certain postulates were left out by him. the point that Najib is making, and it's a correct point, and it answers your question about their equivalence, is you see the theorems, you don't see the axioms. So to find the axioms, you have to use an inductive process. Once the inductive process is there, the theorems and axioms are equivalent. So if I'm a student and I go into class and the professor presents the theorems and the axioms, it looks like a silly game to me. If I have the theorems, I get the axioms. I have the axioms, I have the theorems. But the whole historical process of discovery of the axioms, which was the inductive part, is totally lost. And that's one of the things Najib is talking about instruction versus education. If I want to produce people who can go out and solve problems, I come and tell them the industry theorem, and like Jeremy says, the industrial military complex, here's what you need to create a field. Oh, by the way, you can justify this with axioms and so on the test, so learn it. But I haven't taught, and I haven't helped them start from the theorems and get to the axioms. You do that when you write doctoral thesis.
So
Okay, one question. I would like to add to that. I made one experiment once when I was teaching that as part of the systemic approach. So I brought that from the Greek. I started teaching that to students from mathematics. So they told me if I can do it the other way around. I told them, if you agree that you might lose your time next year probability, the course I'm giving in probability, I can give it to you, not as usual, going from the axioms to the theorem. I will start with the theorem and we'll go to the axiom. But we probably will see less than the half of the subject that I must give you. So I will have more effectiveness teaching you, but I will have less efficiency. Do you agree with that? Yes. Silence. So they say in that paper, happened what I suppose that would happen. I couldn't teach more than the half of the course because I was going from the axiom, from the theorem to the axiom. So it was most effective but less efficient.
You had a question?
So I agree with you by 50%. So I mean, if we have a set of axioms, and axioms are something we agree, we don't have to prove them because somehow it's obvious. So now if I combine my different axioms and I create a new theorem, and to prove the theorems, I try to create a contradiction.
The creation is the other way around, not
yes. And then, but I mean, to prove the theorems, I need the axioms.
Yeah.
So if I start from the theorems and to deduct the axioms, I just have to look at the theorems, what I need to prove them, and then I get the axioms. They are completely similar.
Let me use the example of probability. Probability started and most people don't know this, in the 17th century, after a hard day of conversational sessions like this one, we would get together, mathematicians would, and we'd play cards. I don't know what we're going to do after this session. We'd play cards, and being mathematicians, I would see Najib wins all the time, and I'd want to know why, and people developed, all this theory started then. Later in the 18th century, there was some more serious work. There was the work on noting errors, the Gaussian curve of errors. Another source for probabilities, that was the social sciences. Another source of error, there's the famous problem they had in the Russian army that soldiers were dying from horse kicks. And they wanted to know, because like Jeremy, they were suspicious that maybe the right people were being bumped off. So they hired someone to decide whether the people dying from horse kicks was planned or not planned, and he developed the Poisson distribution, was Poisson,
yes.
And he came to the conclusion that that these people dying from horse kicks was normal, and at the time he didn't dream that this would be used later on in research. So from 1630 to 1930, 300 years, no one thought about axioms. Everything was a distinct problem. It was a game. It was a social science. It was the industry. In 1930, Several Russian scientists, the names momentarily I forget, came down and said, did you know that all this theory can be based on 3 axioms? And they started the axiomatic approach to probability. So axioms, you see, the fact that you say this means you've never been through an Najib's course. Axioms doesn't mean here are some theorems, tell me what you need to prove them. It's the hardest thing in the world to go to theorems and say, what do I need to improve them? It's not so much that they're of use or obvious. It came as a surprise that 3 axioms could generate all of probability. No one even ever thought of it that way. And the point is, the same thing, for example, happened in group theory. There was a theory of real analysis, there was a theory of groups, there was a theory of combinatorics, and then someone said, you know, all these proofs look alike, let's invent the concept of group. No one had ever heard of a group. And group theory is a very powerful source there. The point is, the process of creating axioms is not being given them, say prove some theorem. It's not saying what's obvious. It's not saying, here are some theorems, what do I need to prove them? It's painstaking research of coming up with ideas that unify things. It's a true inductive process. The fact that you don't know it means you've never been taught it. And very often people only learn it when you write a PhD. You're writing a PhD, you're trying to find actions for something, and that's the first time in your life you go to your professor and say, well, what are actions? You say, well, that's your job, come up with them. He says, I don't know how to come up with them. He says, there's no rules. And the point is, you come up with them, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. The point is, this is a very important educational process. It's not being taught because it wastes, what Najib said is 100% correct.
Waste, you know.
We waste time, and I'll add.
It's not a real waste, but the people see it as a waste.
And I'll give an example. I used to teach like you. I attempt to teach like you. And one day someone was nice to me. They're saying, I'm the chair, you can't do this. They say, so I was on Long Island. There were like 20 other universities in our area. They say, if you teach this way, you'll be developing their minds, but they need A's to get their jobs, and they'll find out that we're giving a rigorous course.
Pass the exams.
They're giving a rigorous course in teaching, and they'll just leave our university and go elsewhere, and we will lose enrollment and close down. So the point is, there's a competition effect.
Yes.
You are working to serve the industrial military complex. I don't know. I would just say industry, but if you want to throw in the military, that's fine. And the point is, to do that, you need certifications. You come to get a job, whatever is your degree. And you're competing with other schools who are producing very good people, efficiency, but not effectiveness. And the system does not give you the time. I mean, you mentioned statistics before. There's an answer to your question. I had the privilege of taking a course when I was at the University of Louisville. So there was a professor, she gave a graduate course in statistics. And the way she gave the course was very simple. Every day, we came in and we read a paper. The paper could come from the social sciences, it could come from biology, it could come from any of the sciences that use statistics. And you could take that course. And the way she taught the course, she didn't teach any theory. She says, I'm tired of teaching theory. We read the paper, and we had to come back and say, this is right in the paper, and this is wrong. These are papers that were published in referee journals. And when we got through the course, we understood that it's not shocking that people publish papers. They say, n equals this, I used the 5% criteria, I got this, and it's correct, and it's total gibberish.
Yes.
And we spent a course doing that, so we lost the shot, and we learned how to do things correctly. And the point is, the answer to one of the responses to your question is, make sure people not only know all the formulas which is what people are teaching in these courses, make sure they can articulate them, defend them, and they can expose the basic principles and expose what's right and what's wrong. And there are ways to do this, it's just not being done. And in this case, you can show all types of papers that quote papers. I mean, a person's supposed to spend maybe an appendix and saying, here are the results, and saying, here are my 5 assumptions, here's what I produced, and you read the assumptions and say, why would I assume this? Oh, I'll assume this if I'm the Coca-Cola company. And after the result of saying, here are things we haven't done, we didn't differentiate this cohort between the elderly and the elderly, or we didn't look at the effect of Coca-Cola on hospital patients and healthy patients, or we didn't look at this, and you see, the majority of the papers, these are assumptions, these are the things we haven't done, you can judge the paper. Instead, you have to read the paper and fill that in yourself. I don't need anyone telling me about the methods and everything else, I know the methods. So the point is, we can change the culture by which things are done, and these things will be more transparent. There are always people who will know the methods, and there are people who will be able to take a paper and criticize it and say, this wasn't done and this wasn't done. I'll just say one more story. I heard this on the radio once, I never verified it, but so they researched it, they finally found this concept mentioned in one of the textbooks. This textbook said I got it from textbook B. Textbook B. Textbook B said I got it from textbook C. When they finally came to Z, they quoted a Y, they came a paper, and they went to Z. What was the paper? Some graduate student was bored, tested urine samples of 12 female graduate students, published a paper, and said, in this study, we had N equals 12, and we showed that this increases calcium retention, and that was the paper. Now, if all these textbooks had quoted it, you know, no one would be talking about this, you know, orange juice company we're basing ourselves. Too often, we don't train people to teach statistics.
Let me give you an example of how bad we are teaching. How bad. I mean, we are hurting the student and the society. I'm going to give you one example. In our country, when you have we have thesis and undergraduate and master. So people different from the teacher would go to make the evaluation, 4 or 5 people. And once, the first time I made that, I said to the student, I like what you did. For me, it's positive. You are approved. Now that I said that, I'm going to ask you a question. Because this question seems a medium. But you are approved. Now I'm going to make you a question. You said that you are applying here such theorem based on the binomial distribution. He said yes. Did you find out that in the place that you are, in your experiment, in what you are doing, in your study, the axioms of the binomial distribution are working? He said no. 1 year later, it was Poisson. I asked the same question. Have you proved before taking the theorem from the Poisson that the axioms are right in what you are doing? He said, no, why? Not just no. The first one said no and noticed that he was wrong. This one not even noticed it. He said, no, why? And the worst thing is his teacher asked me also why. They have no idea what they are doing. They don't know what math is. They don't know what theorem, proven theorem in axiom is. If the axioms are not working in this situation, how the hell you're gonna apply it and apply the theorem if the axioms are not working? So they don't have the concept. These teachers are hurting the students and hurting the society. And they are teachers and they are publishing and they are the best publisher in the university. And they're hurting the whole society, but they are the best in the university.
Yeah, please. You are completely right, because we are teaching some methodology, but we do not explain in which environment this methodology has to be applied. And I would go one step further. I mean, the science is also a methodology. and we just avoid to explain to the people using scientific methods where we can use this methodology. And this is
The end
probably
confuses
a
the
very,
means.
mistake.
There's a
The
situation
ends
here.
confused
Yeah.
again with the means.
We just believe scientific methods are completely objective and or applicable to every question.
And I swear
this
to
is
God,
not
in my
true.
university, these teachers are the most prestigious teachers with the highest index factor, impact factor and all that. Have no idea what they are doing. So this is another difference, Risa.
No, there's a
This is
situation.
another difference between instruction
Yeah,
and
fine.
education.
No, there's
They were instructing, but they were not educating people.
there are two-
They were hurting them with their instruction, hurting them and hurting the society with their instruction, because there were no education in what they did. And they are prestigious people, the elite in my university. Come on.
I think sometimes I have the feeling that science has become something like a religion. So, and we have to...
Becomes like a religion, is a religion.
Yes, and this is the very big mistake. We are not allowed to ask about the sense of using scientific methodology to answer these questions. And this is for 99% the responsibility of the teacher to explain, listen, this methodology is running well in these circumstances. Leaving that region, forget about this, because you will deliver very stupid comments. But everyone believes, because it is scientific, we have to believe it.
I'm gonna
It's
repeat
true.
myself. Scientific methodology is a means for an end, for intellectual development, for education, for discovery. It's a means, it's not an end in itself, first. Second, publishing is a means, not an end in itself. Third, indexation, measuring, etc., is a means, is not an end in itself. All our promotional structure in our university along the whole world is based in indexation and impact factor. So the department heads are abdicating their responsibility because they are making an accounting job. How many papers in which journal? And I don't care who were your reviewers, I don't care who were your editor, I don't care, and I don't know, I don't care, I don't know. So give me number, my job here is an accountant.
No,
To add that number, so the chief of the department are abdicating their
They're
function.
abdicating their humanity. They're abdicating their ability to use their own intelligence in a creative way. And they're doing something that's pre-programmed on the numbers that are available by a computer.
And they're earning more than you because they're abdicating and you are not.
That's just the way our system works. And so we are advocating, okay? And I myself don't really want a revolution because lots of people die a horrible way and everything goes.
But here you have,
We can do it.
there should be many,
We can do it.
but here we're gonna have many dead people.
We're gonna have many dead people one way or another.
Not biologically, but intellectually. If you don't kill, if you don't kill the intellect that are doing harm to the society, you're gonna still having this harm. You have to kill the people. You have to kill the intellect that are doing harm to the society. Well, killing metaphorically.
Wake them up.
This is yours.
Oh, okay. So that's the revolution. Wake them up.
This is like
I'm not.
No, okay.
Your fault.
Somebody gave me one this morning, but let me put
Thank
my-
you for providing us with the opportunity
I assume that.
to relate both conversational session in just one.
Thank you for the.
So thank you really.
Thank you.
I am really impressed with you because I lived the problem that you are going through and I failed.
No, you didn't, because it's,
Yes,
you're
I
not
did.
done yet, for one thing.
If you allow me, I would like to wrap up a couple of things. I have some slides that I was going to use to introduce the topic.
Wait,
But
that's the
right
good,
now,
that's the good
right
thing
now,
about
I don't-
conversational session.
Right now, I don't need them anymore, but I was carefully listening to all of your speeches, and there are some words that I would like maybe to highlight just to leave more questions on the air than maybe finding the right answers. Najib was talking about effectiveness in education. And I feel there is like one coin that has one face that says effectiveness in education. Maybe the other side of the same coin is, I would say, effectiveness in learning. And somehow, there are many people talking about active learning. How do we really take care of our students? And maybe research via consultancy and vice versa could be one of the ways to improve our educational methods. In other words, to improve their learning process. And also, Ajit mentioned something that he felt like a cockroach, right?
Yeah.
And I won't say, I don't agree with you because 30 years ago, during the 80s, Najib came up with an idea that is still working in one way or the other. And that's what I said. I wanted to introduce the topic. I won't take more than 2 minutes, okay? Because it's 7 p.m. already. But I want just to, you guys don't leave the room without maybe sharing or trying to wrap up what we were doing all day long, basically, which is a case, just an example of what's going to work. Okay, it's warming up. I would say, it's a specific case when we try to integrate two worlds, academia and industry. Sometimes when we try to put those two worlds together, it's like oil and water. They don't mix each other. But if we improve a little bit, we can find a kind of emulsion to put them together. If you take, for example, if you take oil and water, and you can do this at home, I always try to share this example with my students. You take oil and water, and you take a little bit of white egg, and you put them together, they will mix each other. And guess what you get? Mayo. Right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
So maybe we have to find the right white egg to mix these two worlds together. And this is one example. One example that Najib was the founder of it during the 80s in our university. And look at the words that I picked up to introduce the topic when I tried to share with you guys this example. It's an integration of academic activities. And I didn't use the word consultancy because maybe professional discipline is beyond that. I mean, it's something, it could be consultancy, it could be engineering, could be other related disciplines around what we're trying to talk here. And then I came up with 2 examples. One in our country, like I said, Najib was the founder and the first pioneer president. That is the Research and Development Foundation of one university. The second example is here in the US, is the Applied Research Center at another university. And I highlighted the words of and at, because maybe these are the bridges we're looking for. How do we connect these words? It's not that easy, it's just breaches that we can start working on them, obviously from our own perspective, from our own disciplines. Okay, it's not easy, it's not the same thing in medicine, that engineering, business, and other related disciplines, okay? And maybe I would like to finish with, maybe this word is, how do we collaborate research, multidisciplinary, and then I should add multicultural, right? Yes, so I was improving my slides, okay, across the university. And maybe also, let me finish just with this slide. That is, how do we integrate this world, the university, the academia, with this one, the industry, where we're talking about where's the money, where's the money? Sometimes money talks. Well, yes, there are some financial resources, real needs that will, through knowledge, go back to the university and then from the university back to the industry. So if you want, that could be research, this could be consultancy, and then you can see the two worlds, oil and water, trying to mix each other, right? Yes? That example that I shared before. And like I said, I don't want to take more than 2-3 minutes to wrap up. And I think it's worth, you said the word worth many times. I think it's worth to do it because it's a challenge. We have the students in front of us, it's for them, for their future, for a new world, for us sustainability world that I think we need to move forward. It's our, as a whole society, as a human animals, is like the big picture of all of us together. And maybe, like I said, maybe there is not one breach, there are many breaches around there. Maybe that's why it's so complex, the answer to find out a unique truth about it, okay? Tomorrow morning, 7:45 a.m.
Yeah.
Yes? And then we have 3 more days to keep talking about this main problem, okay?
Keep convincing her to start her revolution.
Thank you very much.